is June the 9th. It's barely 6:30 in the morning. And so I figure I've got at least a couple of hours before the sun comes up and presents a challenge for long distance running. And so that's why I'm getting my day started. I've got the light on because otherwise I don't quite show up in the video. And I know that you are all anxious to see my shiny face. I just wanted to provide a little bit of a daily summary in this particular compilation that's going to have already, I know for a fact that we saw a beautiful sunset last night. I know that I was able to keenly pick out a rattlesnake on the road and quickly gather that insight in the form of video for you to enjoy. And I did that all before there was even another soul on the road. When I'm driving, it's a lot more complicated to try and pick out words because really my primary focus, I'm seeing yellow flowers as I'm going by. My primary focus is to only see the roadway. Everything else that I'm doing is a secondary process, and so if I make any mistakes, they aren't really mistakes. It's like that famous painter, it's happy accidents. These happy accidents are something that means something to somebody. There was a big wad of some kind of one-time use paper in that pull-out where that informative sign was. In the past, I used to stop for all of the rubbish that was all over these places and try to pick it up. But lately, it's as if we're sending more and more people into these areas who cannot care for the things that are in their possession. And it's possible it's because they're having trouble caring for themselves. These are all just observations. They're not standardized theories. Without a statistician in the group, are there any statisticians that I've contacted recently? Sure there are. Without any statisticians in the group, without any people from the naturalist field who are masterfully recognized as that, we might have difficulties. I'm going to dim the lights for a second here. Yeah, it doesn't look too bad. We might have difficulties communicating with one another across the board, across the excited. We might have difficulties communicating with one another when we are too excited. So, don't get too excited. I'm going to be following up this clip with another portion of the clip when there's a little bit more ideal lighting outside, and also when I can focus more on the roadway. When it's dark, it's harder to see things that are coming from the sides of the vehicles. But as you've seen in this series, there is marginally less and less wildlife by comparison to what I used to experience yesteryear. So much so that even the road casualties have been on the decline. Here, look.
Okay, I can still see the bear. It's crossing the road. Whew. That was a surprise. Basically what happened was I got to right about here in this brushy area, and apparently the bear was there. I wonder if it was setting up to ambush me. Whatever happened, it had to be keenly aware I was there, and then it just snorted and took off running after it saw me look at it. It's a pretty sizable bear, and it's making its way in the general direction of where I parked. So I'm gonna continue my run. That way I can head back towards the car, and I'll make a decision from there. I actually can see the bear on the road. Yeah, it's just walking up the road, but I'm gonna get going. I'm telling you, you never know what you're gonna see out here. So I ended up running a total of 9.3 something miles, a 15K. I'll call that the Burrow Springs Bear base running. Anyway, let's talk about that. Let's talk about seeing that bear on the Burrow Spring Road. That was kind of unusual. It's one of those things that if I were to advise someone as to where in the park they would want to be to see a bear, that wouldn't be the first place that I would send them. However, based on how unusual some of the circumstances have been around here, I was not that surprised to see the bear, and I was quite happy that I opted to carry this mobile device with me instead of my pocket knife. Normally I'll carry only one object per pocket to avoid any kind of plastic rattling while I'm running over those miles that I tend to cover now. Anyway, stay tuned. I'm going to provide a little bit more of an update from under the cover of shade. So So what did you guys think about that bear in the desert? Did you think it was unusual? Over the course of time, I've found that some of the things that we thought were unusual might be indicators of things that have changed. And the same way that I was mentioning that there were less and less roadkills on the road, is the same way that I would notice that there are less animals up here in the basin who are actively prowling these grounds at night, to include skunks, foxes, rock squirrels, road runners, etc. and so forth. In a lot of cases, I think what happened is the larger wildlife, like the bears, have kind of started to consume many of the staple foods that had drawn these animals to begin with. And also, as the rains have persisted, more and more distant water opportunities have given some of the bears chances to go into directions that they might not have gone before. And that could be the case of the bear that I saw earlier today, which you got to see in this video itself. So again, I ask, do you think that that was a normal occurrence, or do you think that that was unusual? For some of you who have been following my journey, both virtually and in person, you know the answer already. And for others among you, you can answer however you'd like in the comments area, and I would appreciate your feedback. But the overall way that I experienced it was that as I got to the thick area of brush, it was pretty apparent to me that that bear had been waiting for me. And the way that I think that that was possible is because it saw me running on the road, and it knew approximately where I would be if I followed that trajectory. And I believe it waited behind the brush in order to surprise me, because generally when I'm running in a place like that, I'm looking all the way ahead up the road to see, how much further do I have to go. And I'm not moving at a very fast speed, so it's very easy to see all the things that I'm seeing around me, everything that's moving, and so forth. And so I think that that bear tried to anticipate where I was going to be, and then I only believe that that bear didn't know what it was seeing when it saw me, and that's why it kind of snorted and ran away. And it ran away, obviously, at a pace that you can tell it wouldn't have been worth my time to try and outrun that bear. It never would be. It's also unusual to think that had the bear decided to predate me, it would have been able to get away with pretty much whatever it had tried to do, assuming that I was unable to deflect the attack, and there would have been nobody there to assist me. So my thoughts are that the bear saw me see it. It saw that it had no tactical advantage, and it also saw that I wasn't its typical quarry. And so as soon as it saw what I was, it just took off running. And that's basically what I believe happened, because the bear was walking across the desert, and it probably was looking to possibly surprise whatever was coming into its direction. And that's, again, it's just a thought. Don't really know. What I do know is that once the bear made my acquaintance, it took off running, and it headed towards what I believe its original source was, and that was the spring that's located around the base of that mountain, Burrow Spring. Just my thought. I know there are plenty of water sources down in that direction, and I know that we've seen bear tracks all the way out as far as the fossil bone exhibit area of the Big Bend National Park. But in terms of being close with bears, that was the first bear that I was that close with, where the bear had not revealed its presence, and it seemed like it was trying to surprise me. In many cases, I've been close with bears, and the approach normally makes it easy for us to hear one another. In this particular case, again, that was quite a surprise encounter where the bear seemed to be hiding in the brush, which it was not in before. Otherwise, I would have disturbed it while I drove in earlier that morning. And just some thoughts. So again, I hope you stay tuned. There's probably going to be a lot more things on this video that we get to see and experience together. And maybe they'll all be just as unique as what you've seen so far. I hope it's not scaring you, but it's also really good to plug in some values in your noggin to understand that these places aren't for the faint of heart. These are not places that you want to go into where you don't expect to see something like a tarantula or a scorpion or a bear or a mountain lion or something like that. And you also might find that during these challenging times when animals are having their own trouble finding food, that they might venture out a little bit more and a little bit more in our general direction. In fact, during late last year, or sometime last year, the Yellowstone National Park reported coyotes basically trying to corner a person. And that group behavior among coyotes probably wouldn't happen as frequently if their base food sources were intact. So a lot of comments have been made here and there as far as what it is that I'm presenting. A lot of lack of participation among our master naturalists has left these topics up for discussion. Some people say it's a little bit too hippie to be thinking in these ways where we can literally find ourselves face to face with wildlife. And in these times when the wellness of the environment around us might not be at full capacity, when things around us might be struggling, it might actually be the right time for us to pay attention to those quote unquote hippie earthing type ways where we at least talk about the bear in the room. You know, these to understand that there's a problem first takes the observance of it and the acceptance that there might be an issue. And then from that point in time, we can figure out, well, what should we be doing now that we've noticed these things? That's the question that we'll leave for another segment. For right now, all I'm trying to do is present what I'm seeing in real time in these places where literally last year we had to close down the campgrounds because 17 bears were circling the campgrounds in an unnatural way. And that was due to, again, depleted food and water sources. So at this point in time, I saw a healthy bear walking across the desert away from the typical mountain range that it normally would be hunting. And the last time that happened was preceding a stop of the rainfalls. And the bears were basically following their routes where they knew that they could get water, hoping that they could travel as far as they needed to in order to migrate to wherever they decided to migrate to, so that maybe perhaps it didn't have to compete with other bears that were already fighting mightily over the resources that were there. These are all just ideas, again, without an actual research team and without the people on board who I know are not bored. Without the comments and discussion, we might not be able to come to a better conclusion. In the meantime, I hope that you've understood that these are just as I am experiencing them type captures, and I hope you appreciate them. So stay tuned. Let's see what else we get over the next few minutes for this clip. try to tell you how I feel, and your response to me is unreal. And do you hear me anyway? The things you think are alright, I'm sure they help you sleep well at night. But when you wake, was it a dream? We're at a crossroad once again, between the enemy and our friend. Which way we'll go, time will tell. You say my words you don't understand. You move along just like you had planned. But can you stop to see the wake? I see the wreckage through the waves, from the way each one of us behaves. Throw out a line to save a life. It seems I've been here once before, and we're still miles and miles from the shore.